Good evening. Well, the polls say Alex Salmond has a tough task to stay on as First Minister after the May election, but he says he's confident he can pull it off. In a moment, in the last of our pre-election interviews with the main party leaders, I'll be talking to Mr Salmond about how he intends to do that, why he's not keen on a coalition, and what he thinks of his Labour opponents. But first, a look at how he ended up where he is today. Here's David Allison.
Alexander Elliot Anderson Salmond was educated at Linlithgow Academy before going on to St Andrews University to study economics and history. After graduating with a joint honours degree, he became a Scottish Office civil servant, working as an economist in the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. He soon left to join the Royal Bank of Scotland, working mainly as an oil economist, where in 1983 he created the Royal Bank BBC Oil Index, which still runs to this day. He became active in politics while at St Andrews in the Federation of Student Nationalists and was later briefly kicked out of the SNP for being part of the left-wing Republican 79 group. His first big break came in 1987 when he took the Commons seat of Banffin-Buchan, serving that constituency at Westminster until last year. For a decade, from 1990, he led the SNP, stepping down suddenly in 2000. But he returned as leader in 2004, and in 2007 he stood for the Scottish Parliament, winning not only the Holyrood constituency of Gordon, but also the election, becoming First Minister of Scotland. Outside politics, Alex Salmond lists his main interests as football, reading and golf, so much so that on a recent edition of Desert Island Discs he chose a sand wedge as his luxury item. And with a well-known passion for horse racing, he's keen to make it a double in the race for Holyrood in May.
Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to Alex Salmond. I began by asking him for his big idea for the election.
Vision for the future of the country. I mean, how do you win elections? You fight them on your record, or on the team that you've got, but above all, you fight them on a vision for the future of Scotland.
Which is what, though? I mean, what's new?
Well, a great deal is new in terms of the last 4 years, but if I had to say one thing in terms of the economic future of the country, that's the intention that this country, Scotland, will do the marine engineering of the energy future of the European continent, and that seems to me a big vision. Just as this city, incidentally, in Glasgow, that once did the marine engineering of the 19th century, we'll do the marine engineering in the 21st century.
Of course you wanted Scotland to be a centre of marine energy, but you've wanted that for years.
Well, what's new is that we've demonstrated in the last 4 years that we're well on the way to getting there. I mean, we've licensed, 34 renewable energy projects of significant scale. We've exceeded our renewable energy targets. We now know that we have an achievable resource in the next few decades in Scotland to generate enough power to power Germany, if we so choose, certainly to be an economic and energy powerhouse of the European continent. And if you want verification of it, then just in the last few weeks, Mitsubishi, one of the greatest corporations in the world, have chosen to put in £100 million to research and development because they believe that Scotland is the marine energy centre of renewable energy for the continent of Europe. So what's new? There's lots new, Gordon, and that's an exciting vision for our youngsters in Scotland.
What is your preference? Is it to, I don't know, win enough seats to be in a coalition, or win enough seats to do what you're doing at the moment?
My preference is to have a minority government. And obviously my overall preference would be to win an absolute majority, but short of that, I think minority government has proven itself to be good for Scotland over the last 4 years. I'd like to have more than a plurality of one. I'd like to have a majority of more than one over our leading opponents, but I think minority government has been good for Scotland.
Right, so what are you saying? You actually actively would not like to form a coalition with any other party?
No, you asked me what my preference was, and my preference is that minority government bestows a number of advantages. Am I ruling out a coalition? No, I'm not ruling out a coalition. But as a preference, I think we want to win the election, and if we don't get a majority, then I think a minority government. I mean, for example, if you win re-election, Gordon, then some of the issues which the other parties combine to stop, you would have certainly a moral authority and a mandate to progress. I mean, for example, minimum pricing on alcohol. The rest of the parties combine to stop it. My judgment would be, if we win re-election, that is a policy we'll be able to pursue in the next Parliament with the support of the people behind us. A referendum on independence for Scotland would be another policy. With a refreshed mandate, you'd have the ability to get it through the Parliament.
Some of the things you've been saying recently, I guess, boil down to saying, me and my pals are better than Ian Gray and his pals.
I'd like to fight the election on the basis that we've got a cracking record as a government over the last 4 years. We've got a great team to put the next record into operation, and we've got a vision for the future of this country as an independent Scotland, as an energy powerhouse of the European continent. That's how I want to fight the election.
I think this is a quote. You said if you take people like John Swinney and Nicola Sturgeon and compare them with their Labour equivalents, I think there's no contest.
Well, as I said, we're fighting on a record, the team and a vision. I think our team, yes, has more calibre than their team, and I think most fair-minded people in Scotland would accept that.
What does that mean? I mean, are you suggesting that somehow Labour isn't competent to run the country?
Oh, I think there's a number of people in the Labour Party who don't seem to me the sort of people I would trust to run the country. I mean, look at the health service. Who would you rather have running the health service in Scotland? Would you rather have Nicola Sturgeon or Jackie Baillie? I think most people in Scotland would say they would rather have Nicola Sturgeon. But we'll see in the election.
No, but you seem to be suggesting that somehow... I mean, I can understand that you would say that you wouldn't like Jackie Baillie running the health service because you don't agree with her policies. But what are you saying she's not... Let's not personalise it too much, but you're saying that Jackie Baillie and others on the Labour front bench are somehow not competent to do what your ministers are doing?
Well, if we take health, we try not to personalise this. I think the protection of the health service in the Scottish budget over the next few years is going to be extremely important. We know that the Labour Party has been at best equivocal as to whether health service would have a protection, as to whether it would be ring-fenced. Indeed, I think it was on this very programme that Ian Gray failed to commit to that. Therefore, a party which can't protect the health service, in my view, shouldn't be trusted to run the country, and the health spokesman of that party shouldn't be trusted to run the health service.
Right. I look from a nationalist point of view. The biggest problem with your period in government, surely, is that the whole point of the SNP is to get independence, and you're no nearer getting it than when you became First Minister. I mean, that's pretty shocking stuff, isn't it?
Well, actually, the last opinion poll on Scottish independence was the highest for 4 years. But
well, I mean, these things go up and down. The point is there's no substantial progress.
Well, the substantial progress that we look for in terms of achieving independence is twofold. One, as a gradualist party, we seek to acquire powers and responsibilities for the Scottish Parliament to take us near the goal of national independence. And secondly, as a democratic party, we wish to have a referendum to allow the people of Scotland the right to decide. You say we're no nearer. I think to have an SNP administration in a Scottish Parliament is dramatically nearer independence than we've been ever before in Scotland, for two reasons. One, there is a Scottish Parliament, which we didn't have for about 300 years. And secondly, there's an SNP administration, the Party of Independence, which we never had. Ergo, we're closer to independence than we previously were.
The McGrahy affair has been in the papers again this week. Let's leave to one side who said what, where, when and how. Do you have any regrets about that? I mean, are you really happy that the main thing, actually, probably, that any Scottish administration has done since devolution is let a mass murderer go free?
I don't agree it's the main thing that any Scottish administration has done since devolution, but I am satisfied that we took a decision based in good faith and due process. And when you get difficult decisions to take, that is what is the most important thing to be able to say. Now, if you say to me...
The most important thing is to get them right.
Well, I believe we did make the right decision, and Kenny McCaskill did make the right decision according to the due process of Scots law. I believe that absolutely. But I think it's even more important, incidentally, for people to know that we made that decision in good faith. And I would suggest to you that everything that's been published in this last week vindicates the position that the Scottish Government took, that we were taking a decision in due process, in good faith, and for no other reason. I think the revelation this week, of course, is that we now know beyond peradventure that the Labour Party in Scotland were guilty of the most outstanding hypocrisy that I can remember in my period in politics.
Okay, but from the point of view of the families of the victims, both here and in the United States, I mean, the politics of this are neither here nor there. What they would say to you is, look, you let this man who was convicted of killing family members out of jail, and he's now alive, if not well, in Libya. a year later, this is just wrong. It's just outrageous.
Gordon, I've got nothing but respect for the Lockerbie families, whether they're in the UK or in America or the 19 other countries which were affected by the atrocity. But you're wrong to suggest that all families have the same opinion.
I didn't say all families, but a lot of them would, particularly in America.
I'm not disputing that a lot of families, particularly in America, would have that opinion. I'm merely pointing out to you that many families, particularly in the UK, have a different opinion, who've supported the decision on compassionate release. But I've got nothing respect for families, and I would always listen and pay attention to their point of view, and you'll never hear a word of criticism from me of any of the views of any of the families. They're entitled to make their views known. My criticism is solely designed and aimed at those politicians who attacked Kenny McCaskill and the SNP in Scotland, I believe in the full knowledge that their own colleagues in London were supporting the release not for due process or law reasons, not for compassionate reasons, but for economic and political considerations.
Given the whole sorry history of this, why not do something positive? I know there are problems with jurisdiction, getting witnesses and all that. So why not say now, because the families in Britain who support what you've just said on the decision have also been asking you, set up a public inquiry so that we can at least try to get to the bottom of what actually happened. Why not say now that you will do that? Despite all the problems it might have, it might at least have a chance of getting somewhere.
Well, there would be manifest problems, but can I say to you, I think more important than a public inquiry, in my view, which would be necessarily, certainly if it was set up in Scotland, hugely limited in what it could do, is the full publication of the Statement of Reasons of the Scottish Criminal Case Review Commission made to the courts in Scotland. We've already made one attempt to have that published in full. What I can say to you tonight is we'll be introducing primary legislation to enable that report to be published in full. It was an investigation that took several years, and I believe the full Statement of Reasons, if not answering every question about this affair, nonetheless will shed substantial light and give information that the families and indeed the general public are entitled to have.
So you will legislate in the Scottish Parliament so that those documents will be published?
Correct.
Will you follow on the publication of those documents? Logically, would be then to have an inquiry, depending on what they come up with.
Well, I think, Gordon, they should see what the full Statement of Reasons of the Scottish Criminal Case Review Commission is. I still think there are difficulties with a public inquiry because, as you suggested in your question, it would be hugely limited in terms of the documents it could obtain, in terms of the witnesses, in terms of the nature, and in terms of the international politics. Now, you know, we've already
but it's
seen...
something you can do. I mean, limited as it is, no one else is going to do it.
Can I just point out to you that, say as far as the interchange between the United Kingdom and United States governments is concerned, then I think that WikiLeaks over the last few weeks has shed more light in these exchanges than, for example, an inquiry would be able to do, because it wouldn't be able to summon any of the witnesses who now we know from WikiLeaks what their true opinion was. But I think the publication of the Scottish Criminal Case Review Commission's full Statement of Reasons would be an important step forward.
All right, Alex, I'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much
Great
indeed.
pleasure, thank you.